Monday the 24th. That sounds about right. Yeah, Monday the 24th. Perfect.
August. Next week, I was talking to my team earlier today. I'm like, yeah, for a couple weeks for our September campaign. They're like, no, next week, September. I'm thinking,
yeah, that's now. It's so crazy. And I'm excited here to interview Krisstina Wise, who I've become friends with. And I got to tell you, I've got her book right here. The lighting's lower. There we go. Falling for Money. And you had me on the first sentence of Falling for Money. It says, sex and money, two things our culture is obsessed with having, but not interested in improving. And that pretty much sums up the book, right? Like how can you fall in love with the habits or the strategy of making money? And I know you've done it all. You've been a realtor, you've sold a business, you've owned a mortgage company, you've written books, you've launched a health and wellness line. Like, I don't think there's anything that Krisstina hasn't done. So I'm going to keep an eye over here on the live feed to see if people have any questions. But yeah, what did I miss in the bio of Krisstina Wise from Austin, who's done everything?
Yeah, I've always called my life the lab. And so whatever I wanted to learn next, where I wanted just to bust out and to grow and challenge myself and just whatever it was, is to go for exceptional in that category. And so it's been these stages or phases of life. It's certainly not been all at once, but my career did start in real estate and as I'd say a sole practitioner and, it's just a real estate agent, sole practitioner. I was top in my city for many years. So, that was my first intention, was just, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it really well. So I learned from the masters at the time to be the best real estate agent and professional I could be. And I stood on the shoulder of lots of giants, and I did very well as a result. If there's any takeaway there for anybody that's maybe newer in the business, is that had I not really been intentional about learning and studying and mentoring under others that had built great success, I wouldn't have been able to do it. And I certainly wouldn't have done it as fast as I did. So I was just lucky that I had really great mentors there. But then I went on, I created my own real estate brand called Goodlife Realty. And then I had a mortgage company and a title company. And then I did an online digital brand called the Paperless Agent that I had since sold. And so that was that. But really what happened with the big pivot that hopefully will make this a little bit relevant for everybody listening, because everybody could care less about my life. But what happened is a handful of years back, I was just in the grind all the time. I was just constantly in the chase, in the grind, living a lifestyle that was really unsustainable, pushing myself. Granted, type A personality, granted, adrenaline junkie, but just kept pushing. And then my health gave up. I had a very serious health crisis. And I really had it. I had a near-death experience. So what came out of that was some really big life lessons. And it was a real spiritual and healing journey to get my health back. But going through that process, something happened, is that one thing is that people that saw my success on the outside, they saw my success as an Austin entrepreneur, as a real estate icon, as a technology disruptor, or whatever that identity, that public identity was out there. And so that's the way the world identified with me and saw me as far as making money per se. What they didn't see was that my study, my intense study behind the scenes personally, that was my private side, my private self, which was all about learning money, the skill of business, again, learning from very, very wealthy mentors and teachers. But I was very determined to learn. And I wanted to learn the money thing because, one, I started in a trailer home. So I grew up very poor. No shit. Some people say that they grew up poor. It's like, no. I started in a travel trailer. We grew up very, very poor. I was very ashamed to even tell that, really till after I got sick, and I, I was no longer ashamed of that, did some work not to be so ashamed. But there's that. And then also I found myself kind of in my early 30s where I had been married and I was making really great money in real estate. Then all of a sudden I found myself divorced and I couldn't pay my light bills. I couldn't feed my children. My car was basically about to be repossessed. And I was thinking, how the hell was I making hundreds of thousands of dollars, being the top in my city in real estate? And here I am, a single mom, cannot keep the light bill on. The only reason why we had furniture is because people, friends at work donated stuff. So that brought up all that shame as a kid, because what happened as a kid, I was so ashamed because we always had to take handouts or charity to be able to survive. And now here I am in my adult life with my own children, having to take charity from colleagues at work to be able to pay my light bills and have sheets for my kids to sleep on. So it's at that pivotal point where I just had that head scratcher and I thought, all right, I've made a lot of money. So there's something about this money thing that's not about making money. Because if it was all about being good at making money, I wouldn't be in this situation. So I just made it that pivotal, that crossroads. I made it a personal promise to myself and my children that if there's any wisdom or science to making money and building wealth, I was going to learn it. So that's what I did privately for over a decade, is I just study, built. So now fast forward to when I was sick. So nobody ever associated me. They wouldn't even probably have known that net worth or the wealth that I'd built privately. But when I was sick, what happened is what saved my life, $250,000 cash later, just in 1 year, not to mention the years after that it really took to save my life, like get my full health back, is what saved my life is that I had money. That had I not built that wealth, if I was in that paycheck to paycheck, that commission to commission cycle that most of my industry was in, I wouldn't be here today. So even though publicly people identified and wanted all my, hey, Krisstina, how are you a top agent, or how are you a top broker? What's your lead gen strategy? Or, how do you work with all your agents? Or what's the technology you're using? Those were all the questions people asked. Had they really been paying attention, they would have been asking, like, how'd you build all that wealth? How do you have all that cash? How do you have all those assets? How do you have all that passive income that you've been, that even if you quit real estate today, you could still live a really nice life? So nobody was asking me those questions, and they weren't even paying attention to see if that was there. But that's our industry, is that we idolize those in the mortgage or real estate industry that are making bank on the top line. But most of those that we idolize, if you look at their profit, they're barely making any profit, one, or two, they're spending everything they make and they have no wealth, and they have to sell that next house. They have to get that next loan or whatever the case is to live their very important high lifestyle. So anyway, that's what saved my life, was the fact that I built wealth. Now, I had to use all my wealth to get my health back, and that created my new brand, which is WealthyWellthy, that our bodies are number one asset, and our bodies are not equipped to just be in the grind all the time and to just be in the chase all the time and to not take care of our health. And our body really is our number one asset. So that's where I did a pivot, and then it brought me to want to teach money in a way, especially to the industry, the real estate industry and the mortgage industry, because our industry is really, we give of ourselves to help other people's lives at nights and on weekends, and everything that we do to help people get a home to, for their families. And we spend time away from our family to help other families during weekends and holidays and nights and that type of thing. So it's very important that we take care of ourselves, we build our own wealth, and we just make sure that we build a life that isn't going to keep us kind of just on that commission to commission hamster wheel. So anyway, that's what I do today. I just get very excited to teaching wealth creation as opposed to just lead gen and income creation to those in the industry, the industry that I love, and that the industry that's built my wealth.
So I've got so many thoughts and follow-up questions, but the first thing I want to tackle is maybe why, especially in sales jobs, since the day I got out of the Army, I've always worked in a commission job. And I'm much like the person you're describing. Like, I'm embarrassed to admit how much revenue I've generated for how little wealth, equity, rental property, savings, whatever defining factor you want to mention. How little I have, right? And so I'm that stereotypical salesperson. It's like, well, I'll just work harder and I'll just make more money. And then when I get here, I'll take care of the savings. And then when I get here, I'll buy the investment property. Or when I get here, I'll pay off the debt. And it's just this vicious cycle. So can you maybe talk a little bit to the psychology of the salesperson of like just putting off that, whether it's education or discipline or whatnot? Like, what do you see happen with the Scott Groves of the world, where it's like, I know how to go make more money. I mean, that's pretty easy, as a matter of fact. I mean, that's what this whole Generate series is about. How do you make more money? But there's some like psychological mind fuck that like salespeople just never get to that next level of most salespeople don't get to that next level of investing and being disciplined and whatnot. So can you talk a little bit maybe why that is, and then kind of what the first step to recovery is?
Yeah. And it's, first of all, it's just so cool for you to like say that. I mean, that's the first thing, is the awareness, like, whoa, this is the dynamic I'm in. And so there's a few things there. One is that high income earners are in most danger. Like those, I call it the easy button. So remember the easy button on Staples or whatever it is? It's like, that was easy. Well, there's a mindset that it's like sometimes our biggest virtues are our biggest vices. So if we're not aware of that, our biggest virtues can, create havoc and become a vice. And an example of that is for the easy button. It's so many top salespeople or internet marketers, or these are kind of the industries I tend to work with. Making money is easy. So that's the mindset that you just spoke, is that, oh, I'll just go make more money. I can just make more money. So that's the kind of press the easy button. Like I can solve all my problems by making more money. And that's kind of true. But the problem is that you have that perpetual constant pressure that you have to go make the next money and the next money and the next money. And when you're young, that works. But all of a sudden, 10, 20 years later, you're just fucking tired and your body gives out and you have children, or you realize you don't want to be in. That's kind of what that grind is. So anyway, part of it is just, it's so easy to make money that just becomes kind of the lifestyle. The second piece to that is, because especially the industry, any industry that sales, or like I said, internet marketing or something, or anything really commission based to that matter, the awards are given based on top line. So if I'm in real estate and I work with a brokerage, I get awarded by being the #1 gross commission income earner. Or if I work with a mortgage bank, I get by how many, loan originations I brought in. So all the accolades get focused on what the top line is. And then our ego gets really attached to that. So, but the problem is that all the awards and recognition, therefore the kind of the awareness and mindset's all about making a lot of money. And then when you're top in your industry, there's kind of this back end subconscious belief is, I'm rich, so I can spend a lot of money. I make all this money, I can spend all this money. So that's what we do. We live these really high expensive lifestyles that really match the high incomes that we're making. And that's the trap. The trap is we never think outside of that. And it's just, it traps us in. And then really how we want to defeat that is that where we give a damn about top line. So if I said, okay, now the awards are not going to be on gross commission income or on the top line, the awards are going to be on how much money you keep, the profitability. Guess what? Those that are on the stage getting the medals around their neck, they're going to be radically different people. And even to find some of those that are really good at managing the money. How you get rich is how well you manage your money, not how much money you make. So those that are really great managers would be maybe on the pedestal, if you will, because they're actually keeping a lot more, even though they're making a fraction of the top producers, but they're not getting any of the awards. But if we were to reverse it, so what we want to do is we always want to care. There's 3 categories of money. The first category is earnings. And so you're a great earner. And so that's it. And granted, a lot of people struggle with earning, but those of us that are top salespeople, that's not our struggle. That's just one thing. And we always want to, with some balance, we want to maximize how much money we can make. But we have to also understand that that's just one type of income. It's called working income. Operative word, working. That means as the only way to keep the income coming is through virtue of our bodies working. So that means we always have to be working for that working income to come in. But that's working income. And that's making money. The second category is keeping money. So that's how much money you have. There's how much money you make. Then there's like how much money you have. So when we're focused on how much money we have, not how much money we make, we reverse engineer it. We say, how much money do we have and keep to be able to know that it can support the cost of our lifestyle and enough to pay off the debt and enough that I need to be investing and putting away. So add up those total amounts. That means that has to be my profitability of my business plus my business expenses. Now that's how much money I need to make. Now, so we're reversing the order versus most people make all their money and they spend all their money. It's like, no, when we know exactly how much money it costs, again, I'll repeat that, to live the cost of our lifestyle, plus to pay off our debt, amplified to pay off the debt, minus all debt, all personal debt, minus not including your mortgage, plus the 20% you need to be investing. If that amount equals $20,000 a month, now we move that over $20,000 and we have to add on our business expenses that are $10,000 a month. That means we need to be making $30,000 a month to make sure that we're paying for our lifestyle today, we have the money to invest in our lifestyle, our trust fund tomorrow, and we are paying off our debt. So now we even know how much money we need to make. Now we can go backwards. Now it's like, okay, if I'm making $30,000, most people spend the $30,000 on their lifestyle. It's like, no, I'm going to break it down. $30,000. I know it costs me $10,000 a month to run my business. That means my profit's $20,000. Now I go into my household, it's 20, but I'm shaving off 20% towards future self-investments. And I'm doing $5,000 pay off my debt per month. And then everything else goes. Now I have my spending allowance for my lifestyle. But do you see how that's totally different? So there's a law that's called Parkinsons Law. And so my point there, I'll sum that up, say we always need to be reverse engineering our numbers. You have to know how much it costs to live your life. And your lifestyle today, we have to remember that our working income, if you don't have a trust fund or some inheritance waiting for you in the future, guaranteed for sure, there's only one way that you're going to have enough money for your 20-year, 30-year, 40-year older self. Everybody's going to get old and everybody's going to get tired and everybody's going to reach a day where they don't want to be grinding it out. And funny enough, that when you're young, you think you keep putting it off, to your point, because you're young. There's always like, oh, I'll worry about that tomorrow. My clients wake up and they're 50 and they're like, where did the time go? I kept my 40-year-old self, put it off till 50, my 30-year-old self, put it off till they're 40, my 40. You see what I'm saying? So it keeps being put off because we just keep thinking there's plenty of time in the future. But we have to understand that your future self, which I call your 20-year older self, that you want to care for, him or her is going to need money. It's going to need income that's non-working income because they're going to not want to work this hard. So where's that non-working income going to come from? That's the question you have to ask yourself. So if you project yourself out 20 years from now or 30 years from now or 40 years now, depending on how old you are, and you're going to assume at some point you don't want to work this hard, where's the income going to come from? And you better have an answer to that question. The reason why I was able to, keep going when I was sick is because I had assets that cash flowed that paid for the cost of my lifestyle and the assets that actually could sell to save my life in that case. But the point is that that person that was sick was taken care of income wise because I had assets that paid for my life when I wasn't working. So anyway, that's the thing. So how do we build, how does that future self, this 20 or 30 years older, how does he or she have income? The only way it has income is based on our today's working income. So when your working income today is going to spend all of your money on your lifestyle of your current self, that means you're robbing your future self of having income, non-working income. So what that means is you're working for two selves today. You're working for your current self and family, and you're working for your future self and family. So when you know that every paycheck is kind of divided between current self and future self, you start spending differently. And these numbers are very easy to calculate. So anyway, there's like some tips built in there. But to answer your question, the reason why is because, one, all the accolades are all about how much money you make. And there's a fundamental money law. It's called Parkinsons Law. And this is law. It means it's code. It's in the universe. And it's just the way it is. And if you don't know this law exists, you're probably going to fall victim to this law. And the Parkinsons Law of money says expenses will always rise to match income. So what that means is when you're starting out in your career and you're making $50,000 a year and you feel like you're barely getting by because your expenses are $50,000, you're putting off all that saving, investing, and paying off debt, like you said, because there's just no margin there. Now you bump up because you're in sales and you've got another year and you've built all those clients. Now you're at $100,000 a year. But do you keep the same rent and the same car and the same lifestyle expenses? No, just naturally, without us even knowing, we just automatically upgrade the cost of our life to match the income. Now you're making $250,000 a year after a few years later. So instead of keeping the expenses more or less the way they were and really starting to focus on this margin, no, the lifestyle expenses continue to match up. Well, why is that? Because we're social creatures in our biology. And social creatures means we want to fit in and we want to be with people like us, or we want to fit in certain groups. And so when we're making $250 a year, we want to be hanging out with the other people making $250 a year, as opposed to those kind of making it. So if everybody else is making this income or driving a certain car and living in a certain neighborhood and taking certain vacations and living a certain way, we naturally, subconsciously, without any awareness that we're doing, automatically start doing the same thing. And that's called lifestyle creep, the expense creep, without us knowing it. So that's Parkinson's Law. So what that means is if we don't want to fall victim to Parkinson's Law, we need to know our numbers. We need to start putting these kind of bumpers or boundaries in place to keep us from spending all of our money. And just knowing what your numbers are. This second part, that's part A to Parkinson's Law. Part B to Parkinson's Law says, what was once a necessity, what was once a luxury becomes a necessity. What was once a luxury at $50,000 becomes a necessity when we're making $100,000. So it's like, oh, remember the days when we're first starting out? Could you imagine taking such and such vacation, or flying business class or something but then when you start making income, you can't go back. You're never going to go to coach again. That what used to be the biggest aspiration ever, to do a first class flight overseas. Now it's like, no, that's an expectation. I have to drop that kind of money all the time. So that's the second piece of Parkinson's Law. So what happens with every pay raise comes the next set of necessities. Again, that's that Parkinson's Law at work. So to wrap all that up, to summarize and answer that question, it's just knowing how much money's enough, projecting out to your 20-year-old older self, be able to look at compound interest and be able to know how much money you need to, what I called in the margin, and start designing the cost of your lifestyle around making sure you have enough margin, that you're making good money and earning, that you have saving and you know how much to spend and how much to save. And part of your savings is all the multiplication. So you can't income your way to wealth and you can't save your way to wealth. Wealth is multiplication. It's compounding. It's growth. It's money on money on money. And so it's only when we get out of 100%, all of our money comes from our working income. How you build wealth is when you put your money to work. So if you're spending everything and you're never putting your money to work, you're going to be working hard for your money and being in the grind for the rest of your life. So this comes with skill, with knowledge, and with intentionality. And, something I say is that you can radically improve every category of your life, believe it or not, by learning one fundamental skill. And it's the skill of money. And the operative word there is skill, meaning it's learned, it's knowledge-based, it's applicable, it's not accidental. And most people, no matter what profession, no matter what income range, they neglect their finances. And again, the danger of the high income earners is that easy button is the way I get to neglect my money, and looking at it, knowing it, understanding, being intimate, wanting to build it, build wealth, understanding it, growing the skill, is I can just get back and just do the easy button and I can just go make more money. Boom, make more money, until you find yourself as a single mom and the income's gone, and all of a sudden that easy button's not working, or you have a health crisis and all of a sudden that easy button isn't there, or there's life crisis, or you just get really tired and realize, like, all right, making money today is not that easy because I just really don't want to make money today.
I have so many views on this, on just my frustration on why this isn't taught at a younger level, right? Like I kind of always goes to things like, well, if my psyche's too far gone, let's just say I've given up and I'm not like I'm never going to figure out the skill of money, which I'm willing to try. Hence the reason I bought your book. Why is this stuff not being taught to our kids, or why am I not doing a better job teaching my kids, or how do we like break this cycle going forward? Yeah, because it's funny. I've had years where I made over $500,000. The last year I was in the Army, I made $18,000 the entire year. And I don't know that my lifestyle is significantly better, right? It's like I went from the $1 Burger King menu to like $100 steaks over the course of 20 years. Because like you said, that's just that lifestyle creep. And it's like, what are some tips, tricks, tactics for breaking that, law, that Parkinson's law of money? And then, maybe starting with the next generation. So I'm like, all right, well, Scott Groves is throwing in the towel. He's too far gone. But my 18-year-old son and my 4-year-old son, like, how can I start to educate them on these issues, right? Do you have any thoughts on either A, breaking that cycle with the next generation, or for myself, like, what are some tricks to get out of that lifestyle creep? Because part of what I think and part of what I believe is like, hey, you become that average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So I want to hang out with people that are wealthier than me and more successful and take better vacations, because I want to like expand my knowledge base and I want to be more successful and whatnot. So there's some conflicting thoughts in my head. It's like, no, I actually want to hang out with people that are significantly wealthier than me, but I also need to not fall into that Parkinson's trap of like trying to keep up with the Joneses. So I've got a bunch of conflicting information in my head right now, as usual.
Yeah, well, I'll say a few things to that. So you're awesome, by the way. And by the way, you're so young. You're a great starting point. Now, remember, like, no matter where we are with something new, we're all a beginner at something. So when we can create a beginner's mindset and be like, kind of maybe a takeaway is like, whoa, you mean there's a skill to money? You mean if I learn it, I could get good at it? I just didn't know that it was a skill that I could learn. I want to go learn this thing. That's what happened to me when I found myself in a situation. It's like, if there's knowledge and science behind this and this is learned, I'm going to go learn. And that's what I did. And it was a result of my desire to learn money that I got good at it. But, it's taken time. Now, I actually have a money school. It's called Sovereignty Academy. And I built the money school that we all should have, everything that we should have learned in money in high school or college or wherever, I've created that school. So anybody that wants to go to money school, that's what I do. I teach money through the lens of academically, but you apply the academics. And imagine, because money is a life skill. It is a life skill and it's not taught. We learn history, but we don't learn money. So money is a life skill that if we learn it, we can radically change our life, radically. And it's learnable and it's not rocket science, but it's awareness. Like once you get into the money school, for example, it's like, holy shit, how do I not know this? But now that I know it, that changes everything. Now I can't undo what I know. So that's the beauty about learning, is you can radically transform the trajectory of where you're headed by some new knowledge. And, anything we want to learn, we just have to. So that's the money school. And it's not too late. You're super young and you've got plenty of time. And the great thing, I think one of the biggest gifts we can give our children is to learn this stuff and then teach it to them, kind of these money principles in law. Money is applied knowledge, meaning it's knowledge-based and we apply the learning. It's not accidental. The backup to that is that there's a difference, Scott, between income and wealth. And when the two are kind of thought to be the same thing, that confusion or misinterpretation causes a comment like what you said, which is, I want to be the average of the 5 people I hang out with, and I want to be able to have this lifestyle like these people that are wealthy. The thing is they may or may not be wealthy. How do you know who your wealthy friends are and who are just make a lot of income and have a lot of things that look like wealth? So what wealth is, what income is income is cash flow. That's how much money we make. So you made $18,000 a year, and then you make $500,000 a year, top line, whatever that is. But that's how much money you make. Now, I'm guessing, you're going out and you're doing loans and you're building your podcast and you're doing all these things to generate leads for your mortgage business and to teach others what you're doing in lead gen. And so you have your different revenue or income streams. And so if you're making $500,000, that's a really healthy income. Congratulations. That's awesome. But still, every day you're getting up, okay, I need to keep this income coming in. Now, the difference between, let's say, you making $500,000 and let's say a wealthy person is they're not working and they're making $500,000. What wealth is assets. Assets are net worth. So income is just how much money we make cash flow. Wealth is net worth that creates cash flow. So when you're out of the income game and in the wealth game, your income is just a means to an end, and it's a means to be able to live a good life today, but it's especially to build wealth to get out of the income game as quickly as possible. Now that game's usually a 20-year game because money needs time for money to create money, which is what the compounding effect is. But I'll just give you just some rough numbers now. So if we say, so a few rules of thumb. Again, these are just very generic rules of thumb, but it's a good starting place a lot of times just to help us start to be able to understand some of these money numbers is like I said, is a beginner. But so roughly every $1 million, again, very basic rule of thumb is a starting place. But say for every $1 million, that's about $50,000 worth of income. Meaning if we pull out 5% of that $1 million to live off of, that's the cash flow, that's $50,000 a year. So that means for every million, we have another $50,000 that net worth, that those assets pay us like a job. So if our business is the asset and that business throws off $50,000 a year or $100,000 a year, that's the business and all the operations and everything that happens that's paying us that $50,000. So we're doing the same thing over here. For every $1 million, just think of it as a business out there that's throwing you off $50,000 profit or whatever that you get to live off of. So for every million, there's, let's say, another 50. That's even high, but to keep the math even easy. So let's pretend now we've done this is all stuff I teach in my money school, because you have to know your numbers. That's another thing. To build wealth, you have to know you have to be able to do some basic math, not algebra, but you want to have to do pull out a calculator. But let's say when you know how much money is enough, if you assume no debt, if you had no debt, how much money on an annual basis would you need to be earning to be able to live a good life? So the first thing there is when we have no mortgage, no car debt, no credit card debt, no student loan debts, each debt means that it creates more expense. But anyway, if we take out all the debt, and so whatever money is just the cost of utilities and food and some entertainment and whatever you would spend your money on, assuming you have zero debt, you calculate how much money it would cost to live your desired lifestyle. So let's pretend it's $100,000. So you've said, all right, my 20-year-old self, if I had had zero debt, and if I could live off $100,000 after tax, let's say, I could live off $100,000. That means I need to create a net worth of $2 million over the next 20 years. Do you follow? So $2 million means $100,000 worth of income is roughly what we're looking at. So 1 million equals 50,000, 2 million equals 100,000. So that's what we're saying. So we need a $2 million net worth for a 20-year-old self that wants at least $100,000 of passive income coming in. So that's
tracking. I did my numbers. I got to get to about 2.5 million.
Okay, there you go. So you know your numbers, but let's just do 2 because I could do that math. Now, if we put into a compounding calculator, how much money do I need to put away over the next 20 years to have a $2 million net worth? So you could go to a compounding calculator, and roughly if we put in there, you kind of reverse some of these numbers, but the math's going to, off the top of my head, it's, I'm going to really round things again, just to make the point. But what that is if you put $2,800 away into, let's just pretend to keep the math easy, something like a 10%, on average, you get 10% off of your assets, the investments for 20 years, 2,800 times 10%, or that's, I think, 240 months. that you keep putting away, that's going to equal $672,000. So $2,800 per month for 240 months equals like 272 or something around that. So you've saved $672,000 by working 20 years and saving $2,800 religiously, not missing a month. That's only equal to $672,000. But you actually have $2 million by virtue if you're compounding it at whatever interest rate that you get on average. So the question is, like, to me, the big aha moment is like, wait, my hard work laboring for 20 years and being disciplined to put of all my money I made to make sure I put that almost $3,000 a month away every single month, and doing that hard work, that only equaled $672,000 relative to the $2 million of net worth I have. So what that means is you have $2 million if it compounded 10% by putting that $2,800 away. Where did the other 1.3 million come from?
It's all interest growth.
It's all money on money on money. So your hard work, that's why you can't income or save your way to wealth. Money is wealth. Money building money, and compounding. So your money outperformed your 20 years of labor and saving 2 to 1. That's what the wealthy people know. So wealthy people like, hell, I'm absolutely positively going to start putting money away today and know how much based on reverse engineering these numbers, because why would I would have to work 3 times as hard or put, $9,000 away, to try to save the same per month, to save the same amount of money over time, over that 20 years. So that's why we want to start today. So you have 10 years or 20 years or 30. So the younger you start, the more opportunity to wealth creation you have. But that way, just knowing this and knowing you want your 20-year-old older self to have that $2 million and that 100,000 roughly of passive income sitting there, even if you keep working the next 10 or 20, wouldn't that be nice just to have that 100 or 150 coming in? And then you're even the way you work's totally different. But those that never start 20 years from now, their 20-year-older self, you started at 30, now you're 50, you're 35, now you're 55. And you have to go to work every day just as hard because you didn't allow your money to do that 20 years of hard work. So wealthy mindset, wealth creators, understanding how wealth works, we are very concerned with the margin between the difference of how much we make and how much we spend. And because I want my money to work as hard as it can, I'm going to, without sacrificing much today. I mean, I still am not going to not live a good life today, but just knowing if I have that 20 years, I'm going to put that 20 years of money to work. So, but if we're not taught that, and we're just taught to go make more money, and the entire industry in sales, especially real estate and mortgage, is just go do more loans or just go sell another house and become number one, that's all we're taught. That's the trap and that's the grind. And then we get used to those, those higher lifestyles. And if we go up, we never want to go back down. So that's the trap. But you just learn some fundamentals. You have to know another money principle is, where you put your energy expands. If you want your wealth to expand, that's an energy principle. Money is no exception. Money is an energetic force if you create it as energy. So that you have to want to pay attention to your money, manage your money. If you want to neglect it, and just say, I don't want to see it. It's as long as I have to go about worrying and just make more money, make more of it, you're going to be stuck in the trap. So we want to create this intimacy with our money. It's just a law that we want to look at it, see it, know how much is there, do some numbers, know our math. I call it millionaire math, and put these things in place. And then you just create some bumpers, like if you're bowling, I'm a terrible bowler. So I put the bumpers up so I don't do a gutter ball every single time. And it's amazing how well I can bowl when I can just bounce off the bumpers. It's like, whoa, there's a strike. Otherwise it would have been because it bumped off the bumper and went in just the right way. So it makes bowling so much more fun, because gutter ball after gutter ball after gutter ball isn't all that fun. So that's what we do with our money. We create these bumpers, and there's another strike. There's another strike. But without those bumpers, we spend it all, and it's just one big gutter ball at the end. But again, this is all learnable. It's all doable for everybody. It's
I
super.
just had this. I had this life vision of like, and so your whole life was just one big gutter ball, and I'm like, oh, that's a horrible thing to think about on my deathbed.
Right, exactly. Anyway,
Um,
so I could teach and talk about this forever, but
no,
hopefully.
I love it. I just went to this. I went to this very simple Dave Ramsey calculator. Put in your current age, your future age. I put in a very minimal rate of return at 6%. I put in what I'm contributing right now to my 401k, to my, cash value life insurance and all that stuff. And it's like, I'm kind of on track. If I want to have $2.8 million by 59 and a half to retire young, I'm kind of on track. I got to put about $4,000 a month into retirement savings, 401ks, whatnot. So it's like, it's much more, well, personally, I feel good because I'm much more on track than I like to admit publicly. But it is so much simpler than I think we think it is. I just got to cut out all the peripheral spending. Like, to the point about the lifestyle creep, I'm like the king of wasteful $150 purchases. A new pair of shoes here, something on Amazon that looks cool that I'll maybe use once or twice, some widget for an add-on to a thing that I already own. It's like, those are the little mindset things where I'm like, oh, this isn't helping. I can just cut all this out and retire like 5 years early. So
You can, and your numbers. A lot of it is, the way I teach money, there's no shoulds or shouldn'ts. There's no guilt. And part of my problem with Dave Ramsey is like, I've had people that say they're like recovering Dave Ramsey people, because it's almost this guilt trip if you spend like what you're talking about, and like, how dare you, or it's almost this shameful type of feeling, and it's all about budget and don't spend. And I'm very opposite. I'm about money's abundance, money's expansion. It's the energy of money. When we're really one with it, we feel good with it. It's, in fact, I don't teach the word budget. I just say, your numbers. And so if when you're doing what you're doing, Scott, and you're saying, okay, if I want to play a 20-year game, and I don't really, I don't necessarily need to do it 5 years earlier, because at 59, that's a young, 20-year self, if I had that numbers, then what you're doing, and if you say, okay, I need to put $4,000 more per month to make sure I hit those numbers. And that's really conservative if I do that. If my percentages are better, I'll even have more money. So you don't know that. So now what it is, spend all the same money that you're spending minus the $4,000. So that way you're just spending all of your money today in a way that makes you happy, or whatever, the joy of spending is. This isn't about you shouldn't spend and bad people spend money on shoes. It's like, no. As long as you're hitting your future self number and you're paying your taxes and you've got some liquidity and cash in your emergency fund and these different things, spend all the rest of your money on whatever you want to spend it on and enjoy. You see what I'm saying? But it's just, don't rob your future self being able to buy that same pair of shoes that your future self is going to want by the current self spending on things that robs the future self. But if both the future self and your current self are being taken care of with whatever your income is, go to town.
And last point, and then maybe we'll have you on again in the future, because I also could talk about this stuff forever. Your steps or your chapters in your book are reflecting on your good life, setting the good life, money mapping the good life, and then generating the good life income. And what I really loved about the way that you laid out your book is like, no, you've got to map out the money before you go earn the money. And I think the challenge that so many of us, and I'll just speak for myself in the sales industry, it's like, oh, wait, you go make the money. And then when you're making lots of money, then you start to learn how to deploy it or use it or save it. Whereas your book is intentionally like, no, let's map out the financial plan and then go make the money that you need to match those goals, which I just think is so insightful, because I'm guessing this is why people get on that Parkinsons Law trap, right? Because like, we never sit down in our 20s or our 30s or our 40s and map out like, okay, this is what we're going to do with the money. I've got to go make 250 grand and I'm going to save X amount. It's like, oh, no. Just one day I woke up and I was making 250 grand and I was spending 250 grand. So can you talk a little bit, maybe that about your book, and then we'll link to the digital download of your book for people that want to go through these steps in this order. Can you talk about, just maybe as a closing thought, why that's so important? And then we'll get all your links up so people can find you and go through your course.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's I call it lifestyle architecture, and it's just architecting like, really, what is a good life and how much does it cost? And I work with a lot, there's especially in the entrepreneurial world and real estate world, it's like there's this belief that more is better. So it's the perpetual state of more money, more sales, more leads, more, like scale, 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 scale. Like you're a failure if you're not scaling. You're a failure. Like what's wrong with you if you're just not busting out, this year's numbers compared to last year's numbers. And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with that as long as you know that that narrative is by your design, not by cultural design. So I work with a lot of, my students and clients that are just like in all this scale, thinking, oh my God, and that with scale, and many times we take more risk as entrepreneurs, we work more hours, we're giving a lot more to try to scale up to that next level or wherever we think we're supposed to go. So for some people's ambition, building big business and having scale is what they're put on this planet for, and that's okay. My for example, what I teach is my money school is called Sovereignty Academy. My principal core belief is sovereignty and freedom. So when I was in real estate and I had 50 real estate agents and I had a mortgage company, a title company, I thought I was free in a sense because I was quote unquote an entrepreneur and I had some wealth, but my money, my business owned me. My clients owned me. I mean, I couldn't barely go on vacation. I didn't own my life. So when I really got to be clear on how much money's enough, I realized as long as I'm on track for my 20-year-old self in this type of thing, you get to know for many of us, including myself, it's like, as long as I make this amount, I've got plenty of money. It's more than covering the cost of a good life today. And I'm totally on track for my 20-year-old self. So why, I mean, it's always growth and I like to challenge myself in different things, but why would I be killing myself and robbing myself of family time and vacation time and true loss of freedom just to be in this cultural narrative of scale? So again, when we work back from that lifestyle architecture is like, as long as my business is roughly netting me $250,000 a year, and that gives me space to be able to meditate and spend time with my family and take some rad vacations and do my cycling trips and my bike rides every single weekend, I would much rather have this really kick-ass epic lifestyle that offers all these cool things as opposed to sacrificing big elements of this to make more money, kind of that next level of scale. So to answer your question, that's just lifestyle architecture. Like how much money's like, what is a good life? How much does it cost to live it? How do I create that for today and tomorrow? And how do I reverse engineer these numbers? And that's your destination. And then when you hit those numbers, you can stay or be like, all right, this is comfortable. How do I blow it out again or whatever the next thing is? Right. So that's what I just recommend. It's just the mindset of we start with the end in mind and we work backwards as opposed to what you're saying. We just make money and we're just keep going and, kind of hamstring willing it out and hoping one day we're going to wake up one day happy and healthy and with lots of money. And it just doesn't work that way.
It's so funny because I could ask you a million questions about how to say no, right? Because there's in any sales job, when you were running your real estate company or me as a loan officer, there's always this scarcity mindset. Like if I don't take that call, if I don't respond to that realtor with a pre-approval letter at 10 o'clock at night, like, well, what if that business goes away? And what if this, and I remember I had a realtor tell me one time, I also had a divorce and then got remarried. I had a realtor have the balls to tell me one time, hey, Scott, I really enjoyed single, unhappy, miserable Scott so much more than like happily married with kids Scott, because you would respond to myself or my clients or my pre-approval letter at any hour of night, all the time on the weekend, 4 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock at night. And I just pondered that. I'm like, you would really wish me a unsuccessful or a more successful business life, but being unhappy and divorced and miserable because you want your pre-approval letter at 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday, which, spoiler alert, no offer has ever been accepted in the history of the world at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. Like no listing agent is sitting with their client at 10 o'clock at night on Saturday being, all right, let's go over 17 offers now and see which one we're going to accept. It's crazy because all of us salespeople are in this scarcity mindset and we just think it's got to be more. And then we never sit down to be like, oh, could I be really happy making just, $100,000 a year and spending more time with my kids? I mean, it's insane. I feel like we could talk 2 hours about that psychological mind fuck. Excuse my language.
Yeah, no, believe me. And I mean, these are patterns, they're cultural narratives. So to not be part of that means we're really going against the current. And so, going against the current's not easy. So that's what I'm saying. When we learn these things, we know our numbers, we have our bumpers in place, we're in communities that, there's like, we're not in that game, we're not in that cultural mindset, we're in a different one. Then you're with your 5 people that are in a very similar place as you. It's like, they'd be telling you the exact opposite. Like, hell no, don't do that. You know your numbers, you don't need that sale, or you'll get the next one. So, but yeah, I think if to wrap all this up is to say money's learnable. It is a skill, and it's super fun once you start hitting your numbers and know them and you're on track. And again, you kind of learn this lifestyle skill of money, and all of the rest of life elevates. Versus it's kind of like so many people I work with, even like in the spiritual communities and yoga teachers and different things, they keep thinking, if I just hit all these other categories and do my business well and my yoga well and my spirituality well, money will just figure itself out. Money's like the last thing or the only thing, the life thing that people don't tackle. It's like, oh my God, if you just focused and got the money straight first, all these other things like click into place so much easier. It doesn't mean that you don't have to still learn them and do these different pieces, but put money on the forefront, let everything else come second, third, fourth, or fifth versus the other way around. Because not having enough money and getting older really bites.
Yeah, I believe it. So I will see you the next time I'm in Austin. We'll make a point to get together for a meal or a coffee whenever this pandemic craziness is over. And what's the easiest way for everybody to find you, stay in touch? Like, where do you like to, drive the traffic to? Is it your Instagram? Is it your podcast? What's best?
Yeah, that's one, just anybody could Google Krisstina Wise and you can find everything that I do. But I really say I do a lot of my education on Instagram. So it's at Krisstina Wise, K and 2 S's. I have a podcast, WealthyWellthy. So you can, Google podcast or just in your podcast app, WealthyWellthy. But anyway, I'm easy to find is my point if anybody is so inclined.
Well, we really appreciate you being on. I know even though you've sold a couple businesses and whatnot, you're still a very, very busy gal. So thanks for taking time out of your day to add value to our audience. I've already seen some people chiming in that this is great. 20 years in the business. I wish I would have had these lessons 20 years ago. I can start today. And these are all really important things that you're teaching people. So I want to thank you for giving so openly to our audience. And I know most of what you teach, you give a lot of it away for free just because you're passionate about this stuff. So I really encourage anybody out there that's looking to learn this financial game and get into the wealth game and out of the high earners trap to find Krisstina online, find a way to interact with her content, and then, get in one of her seminars, trainings, live events. Hopefully those live events will come back soon. And
Well, just to wrap up there, for anybody listening, if anybody could order my book on Amazon, like you have that there. But if I have a free digital download to anybody listening, that's fallingformoney.com, which is the name of the book. So if you just want a digital download and go through it, that's the book. And then I'll wrap up by saying one of my favorite quotes, which is in the book when it comes to this. And you really just said it. You just practically quoted this, which is, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the second best time to plant a tree? Like right now, so that you have that shade 20 years from now. So money is something we don't want to delay. So I'd invite anybody to just like change the desire from neglect to, hey, I want to embrace this thing and learn something.
That's awesome. I also love that quote, and that's the way to end the podcast and an interview. So we'll talk soon. And then who knows, maybe in a couple months, we can have you back on to talk about the other side of your journey, with how did you grow all of the wealth and the businesses and whatnot? Cause that's an exciting conversation as well. But thanks again for being on, Krisstina. I really appreciate you.